Ubisoft is back in the headlines again. Unfortunately, it's not for a game announcement, a big comeback story, or some long awaited fan win. Instead, it's for firing a 13-year Assassin's Creed veteran just days after suspending him for speaking out, and the timing alone has set off alarm bells across the industry. This is one of those stories that immediately makes people stop and say, wait, what? Because even before you go into the details, the sequence of events raise serious questions about how criticism is handled inside one of the biggest publishers in gaming. For over a decade, the developer worked on Assassin's Creed, Ubisoft's most important franchise and one of the most recognizable names in modern gaming. 13 years is not a short stint. That's not someone who just passed through the studio for a paycheck. That's someone who lived through multiple console generations, shifting creative visions, changing leaderships, evolving technology, and the transformation of Assassin's Creed from a relatively focused historical action series into a massive sprawling brand that now touches RPG mechanics, live service ideas, and long term platform style planning. People like that don't just clock in and clock out. They help shape the DNA of a franchise, and when they talk, their words usually come from experience rather than impulse. According to reports, the situation escalated rapidly after the developer publicly spoke out, criticizing aspects of Ubisoft's leadership and internal direction. The comments themselves weren't just some reckless outburst or inflammatory rant, but rather a form of criticism that many would consider honest, even necessary, especially given the rough period Ubisoft has been going through. Instead of responding with dialogue or addressing the substance of those concerns, Ubisoft suspended the developer. That alone would have been controversial, but what really turned this into a full blown flashpoint is what came next. Just days later, the suspension turned into a termination, effectively ending a 13-year career with the company almost overnight. That speed matters because it completely changes how the situation is perceived. When someone is fired after years of service, people naturally ask why, but when it happens immediately after public criticism, the story stops being about internal policy and starts being about retaliation, optics, and corporate culture. Even if Ubisoft insists there were other factors involved, the proximity of these events makes it incredibly difficult for anyone on the outside to believe this wasn't connected. In the court of public opinion, the message comes across loud and clear. Speaking out can cost you your job, no matter how long you've been there or how much you've contributed. The reaction from the gaming community has been swift and largely negative. Developers, fans, and industry veterans alike have voiced concern over what this says about Ubisoft's internal environment. If someone with 13 years of experience, someone tied to one of the company's flagship franchises, can be removed this quickly, it sends a chilling message to everyone else still working there. It creates an atmosphere where silence feels safe than honesty, where concerns are kept private out of fear rather than addressed in the open. And that kind of culture doesn't lead to better games or healthier studios. It leads to stagnation, burnout, and quiet resentment. This situation also lands at a particularly bad time for Ubisoft because Assassin's Creed itself is at a crossroads. The franchise has grown larger than ever, but with that growth has come criticism about direction, identity, and focus. Longtime fans debate whether the series has drifted too far from its roots, while newer players are divided on where it should go next. Ubisoft is betting heavily on the future of the brand, especially with long term projects and evolving platforms designed to keep players engaged for years. In moments like that, veteran voices aren't a liability, they're an asset. They carry historical knowledge, lessons learned from past successes and failures, and an understanding of why the franchise resonated in the first place. Losing that kind of perspective, especially under these circumstances, feels less like a clean break and more like self inflicted damage. Zooming out, this incident fits into a broader pattern that's been following Ubisoft for a while now. Studio closures, layoffs, restructuring, delays, and repeated reports of internal dissatisfaction have painted a picture of a company struggling to find stable footing. Ubisoft frequently talks about rebuilding trust, improving culture, and moving forward stronger than before. But actions like this make those statements harder to take seriously. Trust isn't rebuilt through silence or fear, and creativity doesn't thrive when people feel like speaking honestly could end their careers. To be fair, we don't know every internal detail. There's always more happening behind closed doors, and no single report can capture the full complexity of any workplace decision. But companies don't operate in a vacuum, and perception matters, especially in an industry built on passion, collaboration, and public engagement from the outside. Firing a longtime Assassin's Creed developer days after suspending him for speaking out looks less like a necessary business decision and more like a warning shot, whether that was the intent or not. At the end of the day, the story isn't just about one developer losing his job. It's about what kind of industry gaming wants to be and whether publishers are willing to listen to the people who actually make the games we love. Assassin's Creed didn't become a global phenomenon by accident, and it certainly didn't get there without passionate developers who cared enough to speak up. If those voices are pushed out rather than heard, it raises serious questions about the future not just of Ubisoft, but of big budget game development as a whole. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads. And if you want to support the channel directly, check out my Patreon, where the latest exclusive video looks at games that changed their genre forever. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and as always, game on.